Hi, at noon, so we're going to go ahead and get started with today's webinar. My name is Larissa DeLuna, and I'd like to welcome you to the American Heart Association Southwest Affiliates webinar focused on Mission Lifeline and Action Registry Get With the Guidelines. Today is part one of a two-part overview. Today we'll focus on resources available to get you started with NCDR Action Registry and Get With the Guidelines and Mission Lifeline. Before we started today, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items. To background noise, all lines have been placed on mute. If you have a question during the webinar, please feel free to use *6 to add a line, or you can use the question and answer panel of WebEx in order to submit your question that way. All slides and handouts will be sent to attendees within 1 week of today's phone call and today's webinar. I'll also post a recording of today's webinar on www.heart.org/WA Quality, and we'll send a follow-up email with a link to that web also. So to go ahead and start today, I'd like to introduce our speaker, Lonnie Den. She is the Senior Director of Mission Lifeline and Quality Systems Improvement for the American Heart Association Southwest Affiliate, which is comprised of the states of Arkansas, Colorado, New Mexico, Oklahoma, Texas, and Wyoming. She's a cardiac nurse for 28 years, serving in a variety of settings. Prior to her role with the American Heart Association, she launched a STEMI and stroke outreach program for a multi-hospital system in the Austin region in order to coordinate expedited treatment for those time-sensitive diagnoses. I'll go ahead and turn it over to Lonnie.
Thank you, Larissa. I just want to make sure that you can hear me okay.
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay, great. And then, are you able to see my screen?
See the NCDR login page, or the page.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. Thanks, everyone, for joining today. I'm just going to give a quick overview of what we're going to be covering today and then covering next week as well, so that if you feel like you don't need part one or part two, you can choose to join one that is meaningful for you. Today, I'm going to just kind of a live browsing session through all of the resources that are available to you at NCDR. I'm going to go into Mission Lifeline, the recognition criteria, a little bit about the reports, how to access them, what to look for when you access them. And then if we have enough time at the end of today's session, I'd love to go into a little bit of the drill down so that you can see how you access your the data elements that you've been entering. You can pull back everything that you've entered, and we want to make sure you know how to do that. Next week, we have a guest speaker, Molly Perini, who is a director from another affiliate who works for the American Heart Association, but she has been an Action Registry Get With the Guidelines abstractor as well in her previous role. And so she's going to get more into how to pass the data quality check, how to do the data entry, and then she'll get much more detailed on the drill down into the patient records. So with that, I'm going to just go ahead and start through the web portal. I'll stop after each section and just see if there's any questions that have come up for anyone. I would like to keep this very informal. The webinar was designed to just be a help for you, new or not new, so that you know all of the resources that are available to you, but also want to make sure that we're getting all of your questions answered. You will need to hit *6 to come off of mute. Right now, everyone's lines are muted, and so in order for us to hear your question, you'll want to hit *6, and then there's also a section where you can type in a question at any time during the webinar. So with that, I'm just going to go through what the first page that opens up when you log in. It's just an announcements page. It's to go here frequently. Anything that's going on that NCDR wants you to be aware of is going to be found here, including the any holidays that are coming up for them, when they're going to be closed, and registry fees, things like that. The administration section of the web portal is brand new, and I recognize some names. I know some of you are very, very new. You've just received your login information, and so you'll be setting up your profiles. Your individual profile is something that is anyone has access to the registry for your facility needs to go in and fill out an individual profile. So this is where you'll enter in just your own information, everything that you want them to know about you, including whether or not you are willing to share your individual profile information. And we'll look at that a little bit closer, what that means here in a minute. And then the profile is where you're going to go in, and it's where registry site manager. So each facility is assigned a registry site manager, and that's the person who receives all communication from NCDR. And then is the person who is able to set up all of the access that the people at your hospital will have. So you may have a physician who you want to be able to just go in and pull reports down, but you wouldn't want them to be able to enter, edit any data. But you also have some folks on your staff who you want to be able to enter data as well. So that's where you're able to the site user administration is the site where you go in and do that, but your site profile is where you go in and you put information about your institution. So let's say you have from being a STEMI referral center to a STEMI receiving center, those types of things. That information is updated in that area. You have to complete your site profile before you can start entering data. If you try to enter patient data before that is done, you're not going to be able to do that. And that's for it. So actually, let's go down to resources. So the resources, we'll go through each of these resources so that you know what you're able to access and what you're able to use. I'm in here a lot. There's a lot of great information in the resource section. This is where you would go in and download your data collection form. So your Premier form or your limited form, depending on the form that your hospital has to use to participate in the registry. So the Premier form has about 340 individual fields. The limited is a subset of the data elements that are in the Premier data collection form, but it's about half of the size, and you can choose to participate either way. I would say the main difference is that your reports are going to be a lot more robust if you're using the Premier collection form, and of course if you're able and you have the staff and resources, the Premier data collection form is the preferred to submit your data. It's really not in that you can you just come over to download anything that you're interested in here, and once you hit the download button, it's going to pop up. It's going to pop up for you, or it'll up in the very bottom left-hand corner the title of the form, and then you click there to open it up. And then in addition to the PDF form, what's nice is that each of these forms are provided in Word format as well. So those can be edited online, and some facilities choose to just collect all the patient information on the paper form and keep it in file, and then someone goes in and enters that information electronically from paper form. The Coder's Data Dictionary, I will say, instead of this one, I typically download the Excel version of the dictionary, and it's going to provide, do you see how it shows up? When I select download, it shows up on the bottom left-hand corner of my screen, and then I click here to open it up. It might take a couple of minutes. The Excel files sometimes do. Here's where you're going to have your specific element coding instructions. So this is the first place you're going to go. You start entering data, or if you have a specific question. What's nice about this is that you can tell from if there are any parent views. So like if something is not opening up for you, it's probably because the parent data element has not been filled out first. So this gives you an idea of how each of the data elements are related to one another. And then the Selections tab gives you a look at what you're able to select for each of the sequence numbers. So sequence numbers are here all the way to the left in this tab and in the Sections tab. Additional notes about the data elements are located here, and then supporting definitions. So you can a little bit more information in this section. We'll talk about a couple of additional ways that you're able to get information about data element if you're not sure how to abstract for a specific element. But it's the first place that I always turn. I used to print this out, but it's a multiple-page document, and so I usually just keep a copy of this in electronic format on my computer. And here's a data collection form that's customized to match the data entry tool exactly. For user guide documents, this one is what you're going to want in front of you when you get your first outcomes report. So the outcomes report, some people call it an executive summary or an executive report. I'll show you where you can find that in the dashboard. Is your probably 80-page, really complete report on all of your AMI patients and multiple different measures. And the companion guide, I'm just going to show you what it looks like, is so helpful when you're going through and you're trying to figure out what each of the things mean in your outcomes report. Your outcomes report you can download as the PDF version. Comes in a slide set version, and shows you where you can find the report, how to download it in a PDF or Excel version. It's located in the dashboard tab after you've logged in. And then this helps you just really with reading your report and what all of this information means. And if you're taking these reports into your meetings, your team meetings, you're going to inevitably have questions about how different things are calculated and what they mean. And this is a really good companion guide to have along with you to be able to help with all of that. And then I wanted to show you that, let me get down where we get into some of the measures in the outcomes report. Here we go. So dashboard, you have all of your measures. They're numbered. You've got your overall AMI performance measure, your defect-free care measure, the STEMI composite. You're going to be able to tell from this companion guide who exactly falls into that measure, what your inclusion criteria and what's your exclusion criteria. And then when you get down into the individual measures as well, and I'm just going to point one out because we've received a lot of questions about this one recently, but metric 37, which is in the dashboard, your first medical contact to device measure. Just want to make sure everybody understands that there are two different reports that are run off of the same data that you're submitting to NCDR. Your outcomes report, this is your outcomes report interpretation guide, and then your mission lifeline report. We'll talk about the differences in a minute, but the first medical contact to PCI is the one that is confusing folks a little bit because people mistakenly think that this is the mission lifeline first medical to device measure information, and you can drill down and get more information about your first medical contact to PCI patients by clicking in the column on the dashboard, but do recognize that the inclusion and exclusion criteria on the dashboard is very different than the inclusion-exclusion criteria for mission lifeline patients. So here you can see on the dashboard in the outcomes report, you're going to have patients like if non-EMS first medical contact was the arrival, so like your self and family presentation. This is not just your EMS first medical contact patient who falls into this measure. So just keep this in mind. And there's the same sort of inclusion-exclusion criteria document for Mission Lifeline that you can use to compare the two. And we've actually recently come up with an Excel spreadsheet that compares these two because we've been getting so many questions about them. It was provided to attendees at the NCDR conference a couple months ago, and we can certainly send that out to all of you if that's something that you think might be helpful to you. I just want you to know that you have this document that you can download to help you with your report. And so the mere bleeding document and the mortality model document, as well as your risk adjustment outcomes document, these I only use when it's typically a physician who's asking about how exactly this is calculated, the registry. These have been recently updated, the median hospital major bleeding calculation, and then the mortality model document, risk adjusted model. So this is something that you might want to just download and hand to your physician or whoever it is that's asking for more specifics about those particular items. And then you've got your STEMI guidelines in here that you can download. These are the American College of Cardiology, American Heart Association STEMI guidelines, most recently updated in 2013. And then the non-STEMI guidelines that were updated in 2014. Core measures list, I do want to show you this because a lot of people aren't aware that this is available for them to use, and it will really help you with your call-outs. So the registry will allow you to use these reasons for administering therapy or a medication or indication to administering them. So ACE and ARB, I would say, is one of the things that people frequently followed on. When you're acting for this one, you need to make sure that you're entering that they are both contraindicated if that's the case. So you can't just put, if you put that ACE was contraindicated, you would then be expected to give an ARB, and if you leave that blank, it's going to be a foul for you. So make sure you're documenting for both of those that they were contraindicated for whatever reason. You're here listed contraindication, and then this is the important piece. So if the patient has one of these 5 conditions, even if your clinic staff has not documented that the medication has been contraindicated, if there's documentation of angioedema, hyperkalemia, hypotension, renal artery stenosis, or renal dysfunction, they're automatically considered one of the contraindications for the medication. It would not be expected for you to give that. So that helps you your documentation. And then there's a section in here that smoking cessation counseling I think there's one more, antithrombotic therapy at discharge, and acceptable contraindications. So anything that the core measures were considering contraindications, they're also considered to be acceptable for registry. Aspirin at discharge, acceptable contraindications, aspirin on oral, and a beta blocker is in here. So just keep that in mind. Statin at discharge, keep that in mind. Thrombolytic therapy IV. Okay. Where were we? Here we are. This I love. There's a coronary anatomy diagram in here. It's really pretty. You can just stick it in your patient's chart. You can use it when you're educating your patients. You can use it for your physicians to document in the chart. It's just a really fantastic graph of the coronary anatomy. That's a pretty new resource that has been added. We talked about risk adjustment, and then this, we get asked for this a lot. So there are two achieve programs or awards programs that are run off of this same database. So your Action Registry, get with the Guideline Performance Achievement Awards, and your Mission Lifeline Recognition Awards. So when you're looking for any updates to the Action Registry, get with the Guidelines Performance Achievement Award criteria, you're going to be able to find it here. You'll see your volume criteria, what compliance needs to be, and then the breakdown of your STEMI and non-STEMI performance measures here. These are the things that they're going to be looking at in order to award you recognition, and these are what the levels mean. Self tool. This is a huge Excel file, so I'm not going to click on it to download it because it'll take. Look at the death spiral, like the thing that's round and round and takes forever to open. So I'm not going to click on it. But if you NCDR does do a random audit. Hospitals are completely randomly selected periodically for audits, but if you wanted to do an internal audit, there is a tool that's been developed to help you to be able to do that if you're interested. The American Hospital Association facility listing is important because when you're abstracting, you're asked to enter your hospital association numbers for each of your referring hospitals or transfer hospitals. Every single hospital across the nation is included in this Excel file. Each of the ID numbers, they all start with a 6, and you'll be able to just take this and sort it for your region and build your drop-down list from this. And then direct patient identifier information. So you can submit your data with or without your patient identifiers. These are the patient identifier elements, and this tells you how to go ahead and select whether you do or don't those to be submitted at the time that you are sending your data file. And I'm going to stop right there for a minute and just see if there are any questions about any of the documents.
Come off mute with *6 if you have any questions. Q&A, Q, just yeah.
Okay.
*9 if you'd like to ask anything.
Nope, on to FAQ. If I'm not able to get my questions answered by looking at the data dictionary, the second thing that I move to is the FAQ. So this is where you can either ask a question directly of the NCDR clinical staff. So you just click this tab to ask a question. You enter the sequence number that you're that you have a question about, enter your question and then just click Ask Questions to submit. And the staff will typically get back to you within 24 to 48 hours. The other way that you can utilize this FAQ section, which I really, really like, is that you can just enter your sequence number. See if someone else has already asked your question. So I'm just going to do one that questions about a lot, and that's your first medical contact. For your sequence number, search the FAQ, and then if any more detail, in addition to what they've already provided in your data dictionary, you're going to find it here. So this is just an example that this refers to the EMS first medical contact date and time. They're just clarifying that it's the time that the EMS staff comes into contact with the patient. It's not arrival at the scene time, it's at the patient time. And when there is no documentation supporting the at-patient time, you can enter 1 minute prior to the time that the first care measure was provided, often 1 minute prior to the ECG time. So let's create the clinical staff to share information with everybody if they're receiving questions, frequent questions on a specific sequence number. And then, before I get into meeting minutes, into education, I would say one of the most helpful registry resources is a registry site manager calls. If you've never joined in, I would encourage you to do so. They're held frequently, and it's just a really good opportunity to hear any updates. Usually this starts out with any updates that are going on that you should be aware of, and then they start answering questions about specific scenarios. You will just go to the web portal on the day of the registry site manager call, and you'll see login information. You join by webinar. That's how you enter your questions in. And divided up between new user calls and registry site manager calls, I find them to all be very, very helpful. And they also have a monthly case scenario that you can download here. It's usually something that we're all interested in learning about. There are on-demand webinars that you can join, and additional webinars. So there are some great, I find them to be very, very useful, webinars that you can just watch when you have time. They're all, I think, less than 30 minutes. Most of them are 15 minutes, but they cover anything from, how to get started doing data entry to how to pass the data quality review, how to use the dashboard, how to read your reports. They're all available to you. Looking for more information. And if I miss a registry site manager call, which is fairly frequent if I have something else going on at the same time, don't need to worry about it. In that you can always go back and read the meeting minutes. They're posted here, and OptumTech is a time saver for me. I can go here, read the minutes, in 5 or 10 minutes. Being on that hour-long call. So this is a nice feature. We'll archive the meeting minutes here, and I realize that I think I jumped over this. This made me realize I jumped over a couple of documents in the section. So we talked about the companion guide. This is really helpful when you're getting started. So who belongs in the registry and who does not? There's a little worksheet that you can use that's right here that helps you understand, okay, does this patient meet the criteria for the registry or not? Note that this one is pretty new, the 24-hour change. It used to be 72 hours. With transfer now it's 24 hours within transfer. And you've got your inclusion criteria here, non-STEMI and ME patients, and then examples of patients that would be excluded from the action registry. So this is a really nice little helpful guide. This document actually kind of goes into some of your getting started. So logging in, creating a patient, creating a procedure for each episode here, adding a procedure. It's submitting for the data quality check. So this gives you a really high-level overview of the kinds of things that you need to be doing. The yellow, green, red lights and what they mean. We'll get into more next week, but this is a really nice overview for you, where you go to start entering your patients, creating a patient, etc. There's your care instructions. How does that patient? I had an abstractor I worked with really early on when I started this position, and had not been told that she needed to actually submit the patient, so she'd been entering her patients, did not submit them to pass the data quality check, and then didn't have any data in her first report, and was completely heartbroken, and so was I, of course. But I realized that you need to do that if you're new. If you're a new abstractor, you have to submit your data to pass the quality check. Here's your data quality review companion guide. So hence tips to help you to get through that. And then there is an interoperability function. So if you are using the same platform for both your CAP PCI registry and Action Registry, Get with the Guidelines. So let's say you're using the tool that is provided to you by NCDR for both. About 60 of the elements will flow from CAP PCI over into the Action Registry, Get with the Guidelines. It's a time saver if your facility is also participating in PCI, and then if they're both on a vendor platform, same vendor platform, that same interoperability work in that scenario as well. If one is on a platform and the other is not, their interoperability won't be able to, but it's a really nice feature for when they're both on the same platform. And then the dosing guides, these are up to date. They're really nice. So when the guidelines are updated, here's where you'll find the dosing guide. So your STEMI patients and what's acceptable dosing for your therapy, your heparin, and then it's divided up in between whether or not these patients are STEMI or non-STEMI. So here's your STEMI guide, and then non-STEMI dosing guide as well. Last thing in here is your dashboard user guide, and like I said, we'll be going through that more next week in more detail, but here's where if you have questions about using the dashboard, this is a good resource document for you. It tells you how you to a lot more detail information about what's going on. We'll get into it today a little bit too if we have time. Okay. So I realized once we got to the education section that I had skipped over those documents. So videos that are available for you to join the registry site. Manage all case scenarios. We covered all of this. Yep. Participant directory, where when you go in and you set up your profile, if you if you make a selection that you will allow your contact information to be used. This is a way for you to share resources with other folks from around the country. So if you have a question and like maybe you need to ask of a similar sized facility, this is where you could go and get contact information for that person, or vice versa. You know, they would be able to reach out to you. And then there's a resource sharing section where you just click in to get instructions on how you can start sharing resources, and then you need to sign a user agreement as well. Okay, so I'm going to switch over now from the website into admin. And moving over.
I'm off mute with *6 to ask any questions. There's a section.
Okay. So a slide set that will allow us to a little bit more of the details. There's a really nice document that was created by one of our Baylor hospitals in Texas that did the conversion from ICD-9 to ICD-10. We'll make these slides available to you afterward. I think it's really nice to have a crosswalk of my patients, and then but some of our hospitals will use their UI department or their records department pull appropriate charts. So, like, you know, which charts you need to abstract. This list that you could give to your medical records department so that they can pull back those records for you. More likely to capture those patients that you need to be entering in the directory, and then you can also provide them with the inclusion/exclusion parameters as well. But it just helps you a step if your medical records department is helping you with piece of it. This is where you will go be able to load your outcomes report. This is has all of your heart attack patients in it. It's the one that they looked at together. But I also wanted you to see in the additional reports section that this is where you go to get your Mission Lifeline report. So the Mission Lifeline report is formulated only after you've provided consent. So you do need an additional consent form from hospitals if they want to participate in Mission Lifeline and be eligible for awards, and if they want a STEMI-specific report, there's no fee to participate, something that the American Heart Association covers for our hospitals that want to be involved with Mission Lifeline. And you'll just click on the Mission Lifeline tab, and then you'll get the option to download any Lifeline reports. Some of you are a lot of you are already receiving Mission Lifeline reports. Some of you have multiple Mission Lifeline reports in your queue. So you might have an individual hospital report, but you also may be participating in a regional report, and that can be found there. And in Texas, there's an opportunity to participate in a state data collection initiative, which additional regional report. So you are in several regional reports. So you might be participating in like a research initiative, but you're also in your regional report. So just be aware there's multiples in there, and they're identified by number. So here again, 2 unique recognition programs utilizing the same registry data. This does get confusing for folks. You'll receive your communication about your admin registry program from NCDR, and you'll receive your information under mission, lifeline recognition, and participation from the American Heart Association. So the notification comes from two different places. This is just a front page of a sample outcomes report. This is the front page of a sample receiving center report and referral center report. So we have some referring hospitals who submit data into Action Register, get with the guidelines, and then their measures are different than the receiving facility hospital or the receiving center. And then here's just a sample of report. And them are blinded, and so your hospital identifier is on the first page of the report. In this example, it's hospital code I. So inside of that report, they would look for themselves as identifier I in the report. That way they remain blinded by anyone else, any of the other hospitals that are accessing that same report. Here are Mission Lifeline Hospital recognition measures. So hand side are the receiving hospital measures, and on the right-hand side, the referral center measures. I mean, the most difficult one to achieve on the receiving center side is that first medical contact with EMS to device in less than 90 minutes for at least 75% of patients. I think ARB is difficult as well, but sometimes that's more of an abstraction issue as opposed to a real issue that's happening, documentation issue that's happening at a facility. And then for the referral hospitals, their door to ECG within 10 minutes is a big one, and then they have a door-in goal of less than 45 minutes for at least 75% of their patients. So when I look at a Mission Lifeline report with hospital, the first page, is just that title page, but the second page is the one where I take you can get from first glance how you're working toward your recognition, because these match up exactly with the recognition measures for the programs. The first page of your report is going to divide all of your recognition measures out. So your overall mission composite score, care opportunities 42. Just to clarify, what this number is how many times did you have to provide care to that patient? So in this case, this is from the very bottom. This is a snapshot from the very bottom of the report. I always look to see here at the very bottom to see how many patients, how many STEMI patients were entered into this record for that quarter, and for this facility there's 9, so they met the volume criteria for recognition for this quarter, and it's 9 per quarter or 36 per year with the data annualized, so an average of 36 or more for the year for year recognition, or at least 7 in each quarter for a bronze or 1 quarter recognition. So time to PCI, there were 9 care opportunities. So there were 9 times that it was expected that these patients received primary PCI within 9 minutes. First medical contact to device, 2 patients came in via EMS, ground EMS, and so this hospital met both met the goal time for both of those patients, and so they're at 100% on their adherence score. Here's your percentages. Here's your statewide percentages for benchmarking purposes, and then the national benchmark. Aspirin at arrival, aspirin at discharge, beta blocker at discharge, statin at discharge, ARG for those systolic dysfunctions, and then smoking cessation. Be alarmed if you have a dash here. It doesn't mean you did not meet the measure. It just you did not have any patients. So in this case, this hospital had 9 patients, and none of them had systolic dysfunction, so they didn't have any care opportunities. There was a 0% in the adherence score. That would be troublesome, because that would mean that the patients did not meet the achievement measure or the expected standard of care for those patients. lifeline recognition, there are 3 levels, bronze, silver, and gold. Bronze is for at least a 90-day compliance level. Silver is for 1 year, and gold is for full years of meeting all of the benchmarks. Here's a more detailed criteria. We look at your data from January to December, so January 1st to December 31st, and then after that 4th quarter deadline, data deadline, as long as you pass the data quality review, you're green light status. We run all your recognition for the year to see if you met it for a quarter or for the entire year. And then they're typically announced in May and June, and they're good from May to May. That fall under 75% for any of the individual measures. We do look at them by quarter, and then we annualize the data as well. And then the composite score, which is the one at the very top, can't fall between 85 or below 85%. And then the volume criteria for receiving hospitals, it's 9 patients, 36 for the year, and referring, it's at least 4 in a quarter or 10 for the entire year. And we expect a hospital to continue to grow in achievement levels. So once you've achieved bronze, you wouldn't be able to achieve bronze the following year. You would need to move up to silver and then to gold. If you do fall out a particular year for whatever measure, you can enter back in at a bronze level. There's an additional award that hospitals can receive. It's called the Plus Award. It is for your door at your first hospital and this is for a receiving facility, the door first hospital to device. So if that can all happen within 120 minutes or less, for 75% of those patients, you would receive a plus level of recognition. It's sort of like a gold star. If you don't meet this, it's not going to keep you from Mission Lifeline recognition. But if you do meet it, then we're able to award you that little plus in addition to level of Mission Lifeline recognition. And you can tell how you're tracking on your plus recognition level by taking a look at the third page of your Mission Lifeline report and taking a look at your adherence score. So this facility had 17 care opportunities. We're at 88%, so are trending toward the plus level of achievement. Where's information about the Mission Lifeline report? You'll notice that when we went through the resources at the web portal, that these are not included there. This information is all housed at the Mission Lifeline website. All of the interpretation manuals, your glossaries for all your different reports are housed there. And let's see how we're doing on time. So we'll spend a couple minutes on drilling down into data. Since we have a few minutes, so this is my favorite features of the registry, and it's there are a couple ways that you can drill down to more information about your patient. So this is what you'll see when you go into the dashboard, how you're tracking on your performance measures. It's divided up between like your deposit, your arrival, your discharge. But you click into any one of those measures, and you can see how the columns, it's just in column format by quarter, so that you can see how you're performing, and then you can click on one of those columns to see which patients fell into that measure for the quarter. And it's laid in like an Excel type format. And then the other way that you can really then to export your what would be considered like your raw data export is to go into that data tab on your data collection tool. And then in the maintenance section, there's a data extract tab. And if you that, where you can get every single thing that you've ever entered into the registry for any time period. You'll see how you select a discharge time frame. So let's say you want to see all of your patients that you entered in 2015. So you put January 1 to December 31st in that time frame. Or if you're looking for just a particular quarter, you would enter that time frame. And then you select an extract. So you can full data extract where the red arrow is there at the bottom to get every single patient, or you can just pick and choose the specific elements that you want. So if you choose full data extract, you can simply go down to the bottom of the page and click download extract and get all of the elements, or do you see how select all elements is clicked here? But if you deselect this box, you can go through and just pick and choose what you want. Let's say you want to know, like, per physician door-to-balloon time. You can go in and just get the information that you're looking for. Now, say if you're using a vendor, if you're loading your information to a vendor, this data extract may not work the same. Keep that in mind, that if it's not working for you, that might be the reason why, and you'll need to contact your vendor about how to get that data pulled back. And this is an example of, this is it, all elements unselected, and then picking and choosing, exactly it is that you want and you're looking for. And then it just downloads into an Excel file for you so that you can manipulate the data further. You can pull over any time period that you want. And, you can create your own reports. The ones we see people doing most often are if they want to feed back the door-in, door-out information to their referring hospitals. EMS Mission Lifeline Recognition. In the last couple of years, in the last few years, we have hospitals going here to pull the information for the EMS offices that refer patients into them. They'll do it by service so that EMS can have the information they need to apply for recognition. We also have folks drilling down for the first medical contact to device information in this way. Is just an example of that extract for door-to-balloon times by physician. The physician is there in the second to the right call time. This is just a way for you, if you're tracking something specific for your hospital, you don't have to go back to all those patient charts to get the information. You entered it already. You're just pulling it back for use for other purposes. This one is just instructions for how to do the door-in, door-out time, but we have these types of little cheat sheets or menus for doing first medical contact to device and a few other things as well.
Hello?
Yep.
I have a question.
Uh-huh.
Look, I know the ICD registry recently updated their data collection form to 2.2, and also the CAP TCI, the ARG don't have a new version of their data collection form. Will you be updating your forms as well?
So the form was updated in January of this year, the 2.4.2 version. It included a lot of updates. It added a lot of pre-hospital data elements as well as newer medications, and got rid of some old ones that we weren't using, which is nice. So those fields went away. So I don't anticipate that it will be updated again anytime soon, because we just had January of 2015 that update happened. So anything that I'm hearing. Good question.
Okay, January of 2015, right?
Right. Yes.
Oh, thank you.
Mm-hmm. You're welcome. These are the staff who are in each of our regions and our state affiliate. They're all tremendous resources, and you can feel free to reach out to any of them for additional information as well. That was my last slide. So we just have a couple of minutes if there are any additional
Off mute with *6 if you have any questions. Well, just a reminder, we'll be sending out the slides and some of the information where these resources can be found within a week of today's call. We'll also be posting a recording that you can refer back to on our website. Also remember that this is a two-part series, so this was part 1, and part 2 will take place on May 11th. It'll focus on data entry, passing your data quality review, and really using your data. And in our post webinar email, have the link for you to register for that if you haven't already registered. Any questions at all?
I did have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Oh, good. I tried to meet you earlier, but I guess it just didn't go through. And you were talking about the core measure contraindications. I had a question regarding, are the physicians allowed to make addendums after the discharge summary has been done? Because I know of our core measure guidelines, we were not allowed to, and so I wanted to know if they were allowed to for the registries.
I believe so, and there is a time frame, but have to look for that specific information. If you send me a question via email, I can see if I can find out for you, or you can also just send the question to ncdacc.org directly. We're really good at getting back to you within 24 to 48 hours of your question submission. So if I'm able to, just kind of going back to the Q&A, I'm not able to find the answer to my question in registry site call minutes or the FAQ, then I just send it an email directly, cdr@acc.org. And they also have a 1-800 number that you can use, if you'd rather get someone on the phone, but make sure you have your participant ID for handy. That's the first thing they're going to ask you for.
Okay, thank you.
Submit a question.
More question? I thought we had another one.
Yes, a question.
Okay.
When I go to share, the regional report with our Duke Executive Leadership meeting, is there, just one report that Central Arkansas? Is there one that I can pull from? Do I have to go into an individual hospital and pull one and block out the code?
So the report then, this Central Arkansas report, the same report is going to land in participating hospitals and our web portal. So the only thing that's different on the report is the letter identifier on the front page of that report. For committee review, we typically remove the volumes off of the regional report. Just helps keep them a little bit more blinded or de-identified so that people in the room aren't getting which hospital is which, based on volumes. But the hospitals do have access to that from their web portal. We can talk a little bit more about that offline and help you with your slide set presentation for your meeting.
Okay.
Thank everyone so much for attending. We appreciate it. Lonnie, thank you for an amazing presentation and going through all these wonderful resources that are available. And we look forward to having everyone on our part 2 of the webinar, May 11th.
Thanks. Take care, everyone.